guys, and welcome to our first lesson on denudation and karst landscapes. Now, where you're going to jump as far as in your notes is over as far as page 247. Now, page 247 will look like this here, okay? So jump over as far as there and we will get started. Now, we're just looking at basically an introduction here, what we need to know for karst landscapes and denudation. As you'll see, you have a little list here, but we're going to add a little bit of extra detail onto that list for essay style questions. So to get started, first thing here is denudation and karst landscapes appear as part of physical geography. And physical geography is questions number 1, 2, and 3 on my Leaving Cert exam, okay? So all our physical geography questions number 1, 2, and 3 on our Leaving Cert exam. Now, in relation to denudation, there is 4 main essays. Now, they can be combined together, particularly the first 2. However, there's 4 distinct essays that we need to learn. So what are them essays? Well, essay number 1 is based on mechanical or physical weathering processes. Now, this is an essay that students love to see, but often their detail is just a little bit off there. Sometimes you tend to get a junior cert or junior cycle essay rather than a Leaving Cert standard essay. When we're asked about physical or mechanical weathering, there's 2 physical or mechanical processes that we need to learn. That is number 1, that is freeze-thaw action. Now, freeze-thaw action can also be referred to as frost action. So just to keep that in your head, or if examiner says freeze-thaw, again, freeze-thaw action is all the one. And my second one here is exfoliation. Exfoliation or onion peeling. Now, you probably already copied it, but we're going to learn 8 significant relevant points with one and 7 with the other. They are my physical weathering processes. Essay number 2 is based on my chemical weathering processes. Now, chemical weathering processes, we're going to learn 3 here rather than 2. Now, one of them we use continuously when we speak about our karst landscapes. However, the other 2 we'll never use again, more than likely. Maybe we'll reference the words, but not really in very much detail. Our chemical weathering process, and a really, really important one to start off here, is carbonation. We've already met carbonation at this point when we looked at the rock cycle and the development of a karst landscape. We need to know that in detail. However, I'd like to do 2 other ones, oxidation and hydrolysis. Now, the reason I do 2 here rather than 1, i.e. do 3 in total, is because oftentimes you'll find the detail can be quite complex with these. However, if you learn an additional one, you can keep that detail a little bit more basic, and you can actually take information from the rock cycle that you already know with regards to minerals. That there is essay number 2, chemical weathering. We're looking at carbonation, oxidation, and hydrolysis. Essay number 3 and essay number 4 are based on karst landscapes. Essay number 3 is going to be my surface karst landscape. That there is my limestone pavement. We're going to focus here on our limestone pavement. However, we will have a look at other surface karst features because we will be referencing them at points. That we've already looked at as part of our distinctive landscapes in the rock cycle. However, this time there'll be more of a focus on carbonation and how carbonation impacts its formation. Essay number 4 is my subsurface, which is another word for underground. If you want to write the word underground beside this, please do. My underground karst landscape. My underground karst landscape or karst feature in this case here is going to be a pillar. Now, these are my 4 distinct essays within denudation and my karst landscape. We have number 1, our physical weathering or mechanical weathering processes. Number 2, my chemical weathering processes. Number 3, my surface karst feature or landscape. And number 4, my subsurface or underground karst feature or landscape. Now, there are 4 essays that we need to take a look at. However, let's take a quick glance at the back of this particular chapter. I want to get you guys to jump over as far as page number 285 for me in your notes. And what we're going to do is we're going to just pick out a few of these essays here and look at when they were asked. We won't do a massive dissection on each of these questions, but I want to show you that these are the 4 essays that your examiner frequently asks you about. So here on page 285, you'll see your list of essay questions. So let's take a couple of them and let's look at what the examiner has been asking. So let's start off with this 2023 question. The examiner says, examine with the aid of a label diagram or diagrams how chemical weathering has shaped one of the following: our surface karst landscape or our underground karst landscape. Now here there's an option given to you. So let's start off with this particular question and let's go for our surface karst landscape. Just a very quick dissection here, not in huge detail. So the examiner says, with the aid of a label diagram. So we'll draw our label diagram here, how chemical weathering has shaped one of the following. And the one of the following we're looking at for the moment is our surface karst landscape. So my surface karst landscape, what is my feature to start off? We'll work backwards here. For this is also worth 30 marks, and 30 marks to me means 15 minutes of my time, and 15 significant relevant points are required. 15 SRPs at 2 marks each. Remember, this is physical geography, which means it's part of questions number 1, 2, and 3 on your Leaving Cert exam. Now, our first thing here, last thing we're working backwards is our surface karst landscape. My surface karst landscape, and I'm just abbreviating here, is my limestone pavement. So here we're writing what was listed as essay number 3. My example, again, when you name a feature or landscape, you always back it up with an example. Where do we find a surface karst landscape? We find it in the Burn in County Clare. And additionally, we always draw a label diagram. However, you'll see that as part of the essay question itself, getting a tick and 2 marks. We get a tick and 2 for naming, a tick and 2 for our example, and as already you see, a tick and 2 for our label diagram. But notice there, it also says chemical weathering. My chemical weathering process in this case here is carbonation. And for stating carbonation there, we'll also get a tick and 2 marks, bring me up as far as 8 marks out of 30. Now that there from our list was our third essay. Let's have a look at 2022 question 3B. In 2022 question number 3B, what does it ask in this case here? It says examine the role of temperature in the process or processes of physical or mechanical weathering. Now, a top tip here, which I'll discuss a little bit later on, is if the examiner gives you an option to do one process or more than one, you always do more than one. So what will we do here? Well, we're going to do 2, 1, 2. What is our physical or mechanical weathering processes? This is essay number 1 from our list. Well, we have freeze to action. I'm just going to pop FT. Again, I'm abbreviating here. That would not get any marks in the exam, just for time and space wise. And my second one here is exfoliation. Exfoliation, which also can be referred to as onion peeling. Now for stating the names, and again, in full, we're going to get a tick and 2 marks for naming each of these. We can also draw a label diagram with 1. I'm going to pop it in for freeze to action because that's the one we're used to. LD for label diagram, and we'll get a tick and 2 marks for this also, bringing us up as far as 6 marks out of 30. However, there's a few more marks to grab along the way with the words role of temperature. So 1, 2. We have to talk about the role of temperature in freeze to action and exfoliation. So in freeze to action, we'll write a sentence saying that temperatures frequently rise above and fall below 0 degrees Celsius. With exfoliation, we're going to say there's a large diurnal range. That's your difference between daytime temperatures and nighttime temperatures. For stating each of them clearly as a full sentence, we'll get a tick and 2 marks, bringing us up as far as 10 marks out of 30 here. That's essay number 1 from my list. Let's come down to 2020, question 2C. Now with question 2020, 2C, we're asked to examine one process. This is a combination of essays 1 and 2 of physical weathering and one process of chemical weathering. Now I'm going to circle that word "and" because that's very important when they ask for 1 and 1. Now I'll speak about this in more detail, but when they ask for 1 and 1, remember you're going for 8 significant relevant points with one and 7 SRPs with the other if you're asked for 2 of anything. Not going to discuss that in detail here now. But let's dissect. Examine one process of physical weathering. Well, my process of physical weathering is going to be what? It's going to be freeze-thaw action. And one of chemical weathering. Well, my main process of chemical weathering is going to be carbonation. For naming each of these processes, my examiner is going to give me a tick and 2 marks. Other additional marks here will go for a label diagram, and most likely you're going to draw that in for your physical weathering process of freeze-thaw action. Now that brings you up as far as 6 marks out of 30, and don't forget that almost even split. 2018's question we've seen before in 2022, so we'll pop down as far as 2017 next. In 2017, we're going to focus on only our underground feature here. Again, it is the exact same question pretty much as that 2023 question. However, we want to answer this a little bit differently. And also 2017 was a really difficult year on the Leaving Cert exam, so you're going to see something very unusual in the marking scheme here. It says, with the aid of a label diagram or diagrams, examine how chemical weathering has shaped one of the following. My underground karst landscape. 30 marks. Now, when they ask me for my underground, starting at the end of this question, karst landscape, I'm going to be discussing here my pillar. Again, when you name a feature, you always back it up with two things. You always back it up with an example. And my example of where I'll find a pillar, again, keeping it nice and short here, but in detail in the exam, is the Ailwee Caves. The Ailwee Caves, which is located within the Burn in County Clare. You're going to get a tick and 2 marks for naming your underground or subsurface feature. You're tick and 2 marks for your locational example of where it's found. And usually at stage, you get a tick and 2 marks for your label diagram or diagrams. Again, it can be just one diagram. However, in 2017, the examiner needed to bulk up the marks, and what you'll find for a very unusual turn of events was that diagram you drew was worth 4 marks. The last thing here is chemical weathering. My chemical weathering process is carbonation. And again, for stating the word carbonation, I'll get a tick and 2 marks. This time, bringing me up as far as 10 marks out of 30 for an almost identical question to 2023's. Again, you could have chosen to do your surface or subsurface. It's just for variety here I'm looking. Now, the last one I would like to look at is the 2013 question. 2016 is identical to 2020's 2C. So the last question on this page, however, you will find more questions across the page just to make that nice and clear. Here, what do we have? So in this case here, we're asked to examine the process or processes of physical weathering or chemical weathering. Now, to start off here, you are given the choice of one or the other. So we've kind of looked at, I suppose, in 2022, physical weathering processes. So let's, for the moment, focus on the second part of this question, which will be our chemical weathering processes. So processes of chemical weathering here. Now, a quick reminder that anytime you're asked to do process or processes, you're always choosing to do processes. Now, keeping this nice and simple, my process of chemical weathering, what are they? Now, marking scheme wise, your examiner is only going to give you the quick and easy marks for the first 2. However, for our significant relevant points, and we weren't asked to do only 2, we're going to do a third. Here we're going to look at carbonation. And we're going to draw a label diagram with that. We're going to look at oxidation. And we're going to look at hydrolysis. Now, there was locational marks, which was quite unusual to see here. I'm going to leave that out for the moment. We're getting a tick and 2, tick and 2, tick and 2. However, there was additional marks here for where you'd find these processes generally occurring. So there was an additional 2 marks plus 2 marks on that marking scheme for locations, which actually brought you up as far as 10 marks out of 30, and that's built into your essay. However, something that is quite unusual to see, so we might not see again. Now that there is your list of essays, and here is your list of essays also. So we're seeing that there's 4 main essays and they can be combined for denudation and karst landscapes. So in our next lesson, we're going to start with a little bit of short question and part A information before diving into essay number 1, which will be based on our physical weathering processes. Guys, see you in the next lesson.